The planet Kivastea, home to the Kalori, is a pre-spaceflight world and, as such, is off-limits to all star nations. The only thing allowed near the planet were observation posts, built by one scientific organization or another to study the primitive inhabitants. Of course, ships did pass through the system, but gave the planet a very wide berth so as to not disrupt anything. To the people below, life proceeded normally. They were well into the industrial era of their society, and while many speculated as to the potential for life outside their planet, it was merely the stuff of science fiction to them. Nobody had really looked up at the sky with anything more powerful than their eyes yet, though if they had, they would have seen nothing up there save the stars, as the rest of the galaxy had erected a complex series of holographic emitters that would edit out anything that wasn't supposed to be seen, like space stations and starships. They would be able to see every star, every planet and moon in their solar system without threat of contamination. Or so the rest of the galaxy thought. It was a fine spring day on Kivastea, and the communal park at the center of one of their largest cities was bustling with activity. Families playing or seeing the sights, lovers having picnics, and pet owners letting their furry or scaly companions have some fun in the sun. This was to be the setting for something miraculous, though they didn't even know it. A sudden booming sound from above drew the attention of everyone in the park and the city itself, as a black shape streaked out of the clouds and began to spiral in a controlled manner. Many eyes were focused on it, as the shape slowed down with every twist it made through the air, till finally it was close enough for them to properly see. It was some manner of aircraft, they could tell that much, but it was not one of theirs. In fact, the means of propulsion were not clear at all, nor was its construction, and when it finally stopped in mid-air, they knew it was not of their world. Parents clutched their children tight in their tentacles. Eye stalks shortened and stared as the craft lowered itself gently to the ground, and the engines began to spool down. The park held its collective breath as a hiss emanated from the back. A ramp lowering, and from within the craft stepped forth a being that they never knew existed. Bipedal, no tentacles, and some sort of suit that hid the rest of their bodily features from their gaze. By far the most disconcerting thing about this creature was the featureless helmet, the glare shield masking its face entirely. It looked around, rolled its shoulders, and then checked some sort of wrist computer before marching off in one particular direction. Many of the braver Kalori followed at a safe distance, their curiosity piqued. The being's destination became quite apparent when it stopped at a food truck, the cooks inside flattening themselves against the wall opposite it and quivering with fear. Yet the being did not seek to harm them. Instead, its head, or what they all assumed to be its head, tilted backwards to peer up at the menu, which had many different pictures on it. It seemed to be deliberating with itself, and finally pointed at a menu item, a clockiatron. It was a wrap filled with many savoury meats and other goodies, a popular dish amongst the Kalori. The lead cook, the one that typically took the orders, extended an eye stalk and peered up at what the being was pointing to, before quietly ushering his fellow cooks into motion. The alien patted itself down, no doubt looking for payment, and carefully placed a chunk of unrefined metal upon the counter. It glittered in a manner that suggested only one thing: Kepper, or gold as the Kalori would discover it was called. A most valuable material, and the chunk that had been placed before the cook was valuable enough to not only buy the food truck, but several more as well. In under 5 minutes the food was ready, and it was shakily held out to the alien, who took it with a muffled yet happy sound emanating from the helmet. It produced some sort of device and waved it around before it beeped, and the screen went green. Then it pushed a button and a stick popped out of the top, which it poked against the food it had received. Once again it beeped and turned green, and with that they all watched in shock as the alien stowed the device and removed its helmet. It was unlike anything they'd ever seen. Only 2 eyes, some sort of protrusion from the middle of its face, and an orifice that was presumably for the consumption of food or speech. It also had some sort of furry mane atop its head, which looked cared for but a bit messy. The alien raised the Cluckiatron and opened that orifice, revealing a set of upper and lower teeth as it bit into the food. It promptly made a groaning sound that many assumed was delight, and thrust out an appendage, sticking the shortest grasping digit into the air while curling the others. And then it turned around and ambled back towards its craft, all the while consuming the food it had purchased. The ramp closed, the engine started up, and the craft rose slowly into the air before zipping away towards the clouds. Many Kalori were trying to comprehend what exactly had just happened. Others had filmed it all on their personal devices, which were the equivalent of 21st century cell phone. And then chaos erupted. Eduardo Ribeiro hummed happily as he chewed his way through the delicious treat he'd snagged, heading back to the much larger ship he'd originated from. He was just a low-ranking officer on a merchant ship, one that had been in the system to deliver supplies to one of the research outposts. The comms chimed, and he opened the line, the squid-like face of his boss appearing as a hollow over the main console.
"Ribeiro, do you have any idea what you've just done?"
The Palaxi yelled, his facial tentacles contracting and wriggling with distress. "Relax, boss. What seems to be the problem?" Eduardo said, a content drawl to his voice. Between the taco thing and the Eridani weed he'd taken earlier, he was a very content man.
"What's the problem?" "The problem is you broke planetary quarantine and initiated first contact with a species that hasn't even left their atmosphere yet. That's the flirking problem."
Eduardo frowned, his brow furrowing deeply as he thought about it. But he was too chilled out to really see the problem, and so eventually shrugged. Sorry, boss. I was hankering for a taco and nobody makes them good around here," he explained. The realization of what exactly he'd done would hit later, once he was sober. There was silence on the line for a moment, as the Palaxi captain just stared at him in disbelief.
You did that for a taco? For food? I don't... What?"
the captain said, before burying his face in his hands.
"We're going to jail. I just know it."
Eduardo sighed, shaking his head. "Sorry, boss, I really am," he said, before the line was cut. It struck him then just how massively he fucked up, and he hoped that perhaps all would turn out okay. He had the computer link him into the Kalori internet, and discovered videos and images of him were already going viral. Oops. And so first contact was made, all for the want of a good taco.